Hi everybody, and welcome to Thriving LDS Singles Podcast. We're so glad to have you with us today. I'm Kay, and we have my co-host Kim. Hi Kim.
Hello.
And today we're interviewing Sariah. Hi Sariah.
Hello.
So Sariah was raised in Houston, Texas, but she left as fast as possible due to the enormous size of the bugs. So Sariah, I live in Australia. Let's compare. Sariah attended BYU Idaho, BYU Jerusalem, and BYU. You've been around.
Yep.
She served a mission in Brasilia, Brazil, and taught Portuguese at the MTC for 2 years, and then worked in research and development there. She graduated from BYU with a degree in family and social sciences with a minor in fashion design. Nice. And owns several clothing companies. She is an entrepreneur at heart and owns her own business, as well as managing her friends. She is a certified mediator from the Center of Dispute Resolution in Santa Monica, California. She's been a corporate fundraiser speaker for the Primary Children's Hospital and on the Institutional Review Board of the University of Utah, speaking at a national conference on the federal informed consent laws. She is passionate about mental and emotional health, especially for teens and young adults, and is involved in promoting the Safe Utah app through the Huntsman Mental Health Institute. She enjoys dancing. We were just talking about that. There seems to be a theme here with dancing. Traveling, there's always a theme. Beaches, camping, laughing, Disney, reading, trying new food, meeting new people, and connecting with God. She has 6 children and resides in Lehi, Utah. So welcome, Sariah. The bit that's missing of there is that you're also divorced. So can you tell us a bit about that, please?
Absolutely. So I was married for 21 years, had 6 children with my husband. And so I've been divorced 4.5 years. And I had no intention of dating. I know we're going to talk a little bit about that. I felt like I had some work to do, some personal work. I really wanted to just work through the pain of a divorce and all the trauma that comes with. And mental and emotional health is really important to me. And so I just really wanted to get into a space where I was healthy to date. And I also have a young child, I have a 13-year-old at home. And I really wanted to wait until she was out of the house until I started dating. And about 2.5 years ago, the Lord said to me, you need to start dating. And I said, what? And he was insistent that I start dating. And so I stuck my pinky toe in the water of dating very trepidatiously. And for about 6 months, I went on one date and I was like, okay, I'm dating. And the Lord said, nope, you need to take this seriously. And so I did. And so I hopped in with all of my feet and my whole self. And it has been an incredible journey. It has been an amazing journey to learn about dating and to put myself back out there. And I've learned a lot. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about that today.
Yeah, that's right. So we've got Sariah on today because that was we're doing this sort of healthy relationship series. And yeah, so she's the brave person coming forth to talk about dating as a single divorced Latter-day Saint. So yeah, what's it been like?
Yeah, tell us how long now. So you've been dating, what, 2.5
years? Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. And
so the Lord didn't tell you that because the right guy was just around the corner, obviously.
Apparently not, right?
You're like, now what? What I don't like is when I get directives like that and then I do what I'm supposed to and then wonder, what's next? What's next?
You think with a revelation like that, you go, okay, so I'll date 1 or 2 people and then the right one will up in front of me and that'll be the end.
And wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
You know, that's one thing I've learned about the Lord, that we as humans are far more outcome based than he is. And in our minds, we date for an outcome, right? The goal is the outcome of marriage and eternal marriage. And the Lord just doesn't see outcome focused actions the way we do. And that was something that I learned pretty quickly as well. One of the things that has come to me is that at the beginning, I really wanted to be, because I had children still at home and I was trying to rebuild a healthy home. Wanted to be very careful of my resources, my time, my money, my directions, everything that I have, my connections. I wanted to be very intentional with those resources. And so I kind of learned, I noticed other people dating, and there's so many different ways to date, right? You can be a surface level dater. You can date in pockets, a little bit here, a little bit there. And I don't think there's a right or a wrong way, but for me, I really wanted to be intentional. And I really wanted the Lord on this journey with me as well. That was really important to me. And because I knew I can't do this by myself, especially you're the one that told me to do this. So you better be right here. And
what is intentional dating?
Yes.
What does that look like?
Yeah. So what I found as I started this was I chose to do online dating, and you have to make a profile. And wow, when you go to make a profile and you have to find pictures that represent you and words that represent you and what you're going to tell about yourself, you have to, if you want to be intentional about who you're dating and what you're putting out there, you have to know yourself. And you have to have a semblance of confidence in yourself. And I remember when I made my first mutual profile, I was so scared to put my real interests, because I thought, oh, well, I have an interest in fashion. And that could be seen as, a negative thing to some men. And I couldn't put
high
that
maintenance. Oh,
yes.
She's high maintenance.
Yes.
She's a diva.
Absolutely. Yes.
I could hear it. I would be,
yes.
That's not you at all, but still.
It's not. I'm as comfortable on the red carpet as I am in a mud hut, but I enjoy, the variety of that. And so I had a lot of insecurities about putting my whole real self out there. And I had to work through some of those things. And so what I found is that you can do a surface level dating where you just put a little bit of yourself out there, and you just stick your toe in, and that's okay. But what I found is that if you want to grow, the Lord is there to help you grow through dating. I have a really strong belief that if you have a connection, a strong connection with yourself and the Lord, and you have the self-awareness and willingness to change, dating is one of the most incredible personal growth opportunities that you can have, because all of your insecurities, your triggers, your fears, they all show up. They show up for you. And if they do, and they can be painful. And you can, if you're not ready to look at that, you can date at a surface level. You can not put your whole self out there. But I think we're missing, if we're not putting our whole selves out there, and if we're not willing to notice what triggers us and what we're fearful of, we're missing a great opportunity for personal growth. I really believe that.
Yeah, I think
Never
that's
thought of
true. Because even in the dating that I've done, or even now, somebody could say something and have no idea that it's going to unravel me for some unknown reason or spark something from my past. And I would not even know had I not gone on the date. And so I can stay in my safe little condo bubble, but But I do agree with you. There's so much more to even recognizing if it's too soon to date or if you're not quite ready. But you never know until you put yourself out there in some capacity and start to see how, how comfortable you are or uncomfortable you are and what you experience. So I agree with that. I think it really is telling and such a great way to learn about yourself and to grow.
Yes.
So I've got a question about the app. So you said you use Mutual?
Uh-huh.
Because I've heard so many bad things about the apps.
I mean, is there a perfect way to date? If there is, you got to tell me, because I'm involved in the LDS community single scene here in Utah. There's firesides, there's dances, there's activities, there's conferences. I have a lot of single friends who have connections, and we have parties for singles. But to me, a part of intentional dating is putting yourself out there in all of these different dimensions. Like, we know that the Lord can't drive a parked car. We've heard that, right? And so I think that if you have awareness and you are careful, I think that the dating sites can be a real blessing. They've been a blessing to me. That's the way I have dated the most, is through the dating websites. I feel like I don't work for Mutual and I don't work for LDS Singles and all these other ones, but you can get a snapshot for people and how they are, which is why I actually do a lot of consulting with actually helping people make mutual profiles, men and women, because what you put out there is all that a person gets about you. And so again, you want to be intentional with what you write, the pictures that you use, how you're portraying yourself. It really is a way for us to connect in this day and age. And you can scroll through lots of people, and not to make people numbers, right? But it's a way to, and you can get a feeling. I am very prayerful when I date, when I get on Mutual and when I get on these dating apps. I'm very prayerful. And I always tell the Lord, I am going to use the judgment that I have to swipe up and down, left and right. But if there's someone that you need me to see, you tell me, and I will listen, and I will work with that. I don't want to do this on my own. I really don't want to do this on my own. So I think that, and I've had impressions. You need to give a second look to this man, or it would be best if you move on, from this one. And I have to trust at some point.
And is that how, because I gather there's lots of scammers on there,
And I think, I don't know that, at least on Mutual, I don't know that I've seen a lot of scammers. And there's a few other sites that I maybe feel like I've seen more profiles that aren't real. I feel like for me, it's not necessarily that I'm trying to avoid bad, inappropriate situations, as much as, again, for me, it comes back to my resources and my time. I want to be intentional with my time, with my money, with what I have to give to other people. And we could all get on there and just get to know everyone on there. But again, that's more surface level to me. I want to dive deep and make deep connections with people that need to be in my life, that I need to be in their lives, and that we can bless each other. And so it's more of, where do I need to put my focus, if that makes sense?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. And I actually kind of see singles events are a great way to connect to your singles community and build relationships. But I haven't been viewing it as much from a dating perspective when I go to the singles activities. I think of it more as a way to connect and make new friends. And then the dating apps is clearly more intentional about, why I'm on here is to look for a potential or a prospective partner. But
it's true. I'm glad you brought that up, Kim. You and I met at a singles fireside.
Yeah.
Right. And so I love that. When I always have a prayer in my heart before I go, especially to a large singles event, a fireside, especially, that I can find the person or people that the Lord needs me to learn from, and that they can find me the people that I can give to them. That's it's just a part of who I am. And I have made incredible connections with women, a lot of women that have been a blessing to my life. Like, here we are.
Yeah, exactly.
And I encourage, I have a lot of single friends they're not ready to date, and that is just fine, like just fine, but go grow your circle I believe that as singles, especially single adults, we need three things. We need community in the single adult world, we need connection, and we need Christ. And those three C's, a lot of that can be found in the single adult, like LDS community, but you have to have the courage. Maybe that's the fourth C is the courage to go make those connections and build your community with singles. And it's okay if dating isn't even involved in that.
Yeah. And it does take courage. It does for me, at least. I've definitely had to get my courage on to go do some of that, my brave on, I guess. But I also I always feel for the areas in the world, because this is a worldwide podcast, where there's not those single activities. I mean, Utah compared to Arizona, Utah has a very dense and high population of singles and activities and things to do, compared to even Arizona, and ours is pretty good. I mean, we have stuff every weekend if we want to, and sometimes in the weekdays, as long as we're going around all the areas. But it's not anywhere near as far as population and attendance as the Utah events. So, and then Kay, hers are, much smaller, right? And some people don't even have enough of a singles community to even have events. And so I always feel for them.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because obviously it's much smaller here.
Yeah.
But if you think that the church is 50% singles, then even if there's a small branch, there's still a group of singles.
Yeah, this is true.
And when I lived on the Sunshine Coast, the group of singles there was probably one of the best things I discovered up there. So it was sort of basically 2 wards.
Wow.
So quite small and isolated, and it's a particular stake that covers thousands of kilometers. Like it's a very big stake, and so you can't get together with people all that often. But it's amazing the things that you can do. So probably not so much the dating, because I presume it's the same everywhere, but there's a lot more women than men.
Yes.
Like a lot more. But yes, that community, it was my first experience of really being a part of that single community, and the connections I've made are real lifelong connections. And it was a really special experience that made me realize that maybe I shouldn't be avoiding the single adult activities. So
I agree with that.
Yeah, and we do a fireside. So Brisbane is like the capital city. And so, like you said, you've got to travel from the distances, but in the center of the city, we would have a fireside every 2 months. So we're nowhere near every week, but every 2 months there is one. And it's great because people do come from 150 kilometers radius type area. And we usually Zoom them, so the people who are further away can actually be a part of it too. And we have a number of things like family home evenings that are Zoomed, and come follow me classes. So there is activities. It's just we don't have that. Yeah, we don't have the weekly activity that you could go to, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But this is probably I imagine there are places that have even less small LDS communities. But I think remembering that every single ward has singles in it, and that, yes, some of those will be 80 and 90 years old, but they still like to be apart. They still want to be connected.
They need to be. Yeah.
Yeah. And so making sure that, the 30-year-olds of, like, yeah, they want to connect and date and things. And, I feel a little bit for them, but anything from sort of 50 up to 100 can make a community.
That's right. I agree.
So, Sariah, tell us a little more about using dating apps. If you had to recommend, so be willing to be authentic and put a more vulnerable profile. I think that makes sense, because why would you want to attract people that eventually are going to find out something different or some deeper thing that you didn't feel comfortable sharing? It's like, you might as well be real about what it is you're putting out there in the first place. But so that's always been kind of my philosophy. And I love more information on a profile than less. Like if it's 1 or 2 lines, then I usually don't pay attention, because I think, I don't know enough to make a decision. So I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I always encourage everyone to put as much as they possibly can. If there's an opportunity for 5 homepage pictures and then 3 more on your profile, and there's 3 to 4 spots for comments about yourself, and you can upload a video or a voice recording, I just say, give people as much as you can about yourself. It really does increase your chances of not only connecting, right? That's why we're there. We're there to connect. Mm-hmm. But also it shows who you really are. And I think, people, it's most of us, especially if we're in this older group, we've never done this sort of a thing before. And so, yeah, I always encourage everyone to put as much as they can. Talk more about your interests. What kinds of things do you like to talk about? What makes you at your core? What do you think about in the shower? What are your dreams? And what do you think about when you have nothing else to think about? Share those things, those passions of yours, and you'll find, really good connection. Even if it's just friendships, you'll find good connection. And I think we're going to talk about that a little bit later, about connection and different types of intimacy and what that looks like in relationships.
Yeah. Let's just jump into what's important to you, or how do you make a decision about, this is a person I should go out. Like, are you one of those that creates a non-negotiable? These are my 10 things I have to have, or how do you approach all of that?
Yeah. So, I have 2 or 3 things that are my non-negotiables. They're just my personal preference things. But really what I've learned comes back to connection. I was thinking about this today. If you're on a jog and you're running down the street and you see another runner, it's customary or common to nod or, hey, acknowledge the other runner on the road, or the walker, or the biker. We do that. But we don't nod to the tree. We don't nod to the car, because there's no connection there. And we are wired for connection. Mm-hmm. And so to me, when it comes to what kind of relationship, how do I decide? I don't actually have a list. I had a list when I was younger, right? When I first 20s, got your list, and it's this long. And I've kind of come up with a theory called the chair theory. And that's what I base everything around. And it's based on the different types of intimacy. And in psychology, there's a lot of different intimacies, but there's basically 4 that most research would show is the most important kind of intimacies to have in a relationship. And so I am building a chair that I hope to find to sit in with another person that's stable and that gives rest, and that we can be in together in life. And so the 4 legs of the chair are made up of these different intimacies. And so there's spiritual intimacy, which would be, how do you connect spiritually? Are you on the same plane? Do you deep dive into the scriptures? Wherever you are spiritually, is there a spiritual connection there that you both can feel? Because at any time there's a connection and there's a certain type of intimacy, right? Not sexual, physical intimacy, right? But just a deep connection in intimacy. There is growth, and there's connection, and there's bonding. So there's spiritual intimacy, and we want to look for someone who we could be a match with, and they could be a match with us on that leg of the chair. There's physical intimacy, which obviously includes like the physical attraction, but can also include physical intimacy of getting out and doing things together. Any way you move your body, whether it's, physical, like sexual intimacy, or it's running, jogging, climbing a mountain, whatever that is, moving our bodies together is a type of connection for us. So that would be a physical intimacy. Then you have intellectual intimacy, your dreams, your desires, whatever you think about deeply, black holes, the Supreme Court, whatever's going, injustices in the world, your deep dives, where you go, that is a type of intimacy that we need as humans. And then the fourth is one of the most important to me, which is emotional intimacy. It's that ability to share your deepest parts of your soul, your feelings, your fears, your triggers, anything that is related to your emotions. Do you feel safe sharing that, having that emotional intimacy? And then of course, likewise, do they feel that safeness with you? So those four types of intimacies build the basis of this chair. And to me, I'm looking for a match, not perfection, but a match, right? Where we meet each other really well in those areas. And then the top of the chair, the seat, to me is the Lord. He connects all of that together. He gives us a place to sit and for us to be together there. And then the back of the chair, it might be my favorite, is the intimacy of humor and laughing. That there is so much research that shows that being able to laugh together and have humor is one of the deepest types of connection that we feel. It gets you through the hard times. I had a daughter with cancer, and we made so many jokes when she was bald and when she was sick. And, that sounds maybe not the best, but it was how we got through it. We laughed so much through her cancer, and humor was a blessing for us. And so in my head, that back of the chair is what gives the whole entire stability rest when it's tough, when life is rough, because we know it will be. Even if you found a good match for yourself, you need to have that rest in humor, the playfulness, and to be a good match for your humor. You might be really funny over here and someone else is really funny over here, but there's not, you felt that before, yeah. I'm sure. Yes. And so that's actually what I'm looking for. I don't have a big long list. I'm looking for those types of connections that are a match for me. I was in a relationship once where there was deep, deep intellectual intimacy and really good spiritual intimacy, but there wasn't a lot of the rest. And it was such a lopsided relationship. It was missing things, and the chair fell, it crumbled. Yeah. And so, yeah. And so I think when you start to look at it that way, all of the lists of he has to be this, she has to be that, it can melt away, and you're just focusing on the connection that you're looking for, because that's what makes a balanced, healthy relationship.
Yeah, I think that's true. I don't think you have to have a ton of common interests even. You just have to be a good, healthy individual and be able to support each other in what the other one's interested in. If you go sometimes or don't go sometimes or all the time, whatever it is. But yeah, I don't think you have to have like the list of perfect match in terms of all your interests and things.
Right. Yes,
it's more about connection.
Yes, you could have someone who has almost identical interests to you, but if you don't have an emotional intimacy connection, or if you can't laugh with each other, it doesn't matter that you like to, go water skiing or shop at antique stores. The connection of the actual connection of a human, that it's missing, and so I agree with that.
Yeah.
Oh, I like your list. That sounds like a good list for me.
And then what about your values? Because I think that's the other thing is, I don't, how they align. I mean, you really are kind of taught connection is a value, I hear you saying, but because I know my two top values are faith and integrity, but I do think there does need to be alignment in terms of what we value in life or what our values are, even if the interests aren't in common. What do you think?
I agree. I think that some of those, maybe to simplify in my head, some of those values are locked into the types of intimacy. So if I'm looking for someone who I can be emotionally intimate with, then they're going to not live in the victim mentality. That's a really big one for me. Because if we get into victim mentality, if they are still working on a lot of their trauma and they're working on that victimization, they're going to always need then a villain and a hero. And at the beginning, you're dating someone and you might be their hero, but after a while you do something wrong or they get triggered, you're all of a sudden the villain. And so there's all of these different things, integrity, honesty, that I kind of put into these different categories of spiritual intimacy might be where honesty comes in. If
or faith.
you and I, right, or faith. If you and I, and again, if we have listeners who aren't of the LDS faith, yeah, spiritual intimacy is just a belief, right, in a higher power, something larger than you. And that is something, spiritual intimacy it shows up without any kind of religion. So, but I put some of those values placed into these different areas: vulnerability, ownership. Those to me fall into emotional intimacy, emotional connection. So I don't know, on one hand, I do really value faith and commitment to the Lord and giving your will to him, but that just falls into my generalization of what spiritual intimacy looks like. So I don't know if that makes sense, but
no, it does. And Kay can speak to that. She had a long-term relationship with somebody who wasn't LDS. And did you guys have spiritual intimacy or what?
Yes. So that was so even though we had a different religion, we had respect, which I think and so, if I'm going off to church and he's not, he's like, that's what I do. And that was fine. Also the values that go with the spirituality. So awe for creation or love of honesty, all of those things are values that, as you said, come under spirituality. And so as long as those values, those key beliefs were the same, with the belief of respect for each other's beliefs, that actually, believe it or not, that actually worked quite well.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Because it was a spiritual intimacy match.
Yes.
And that's the whole, we're not looking for necessarily some people might not be looking for a religious match. We're looking for a spiritual intimate match. And so it can kind of, you don't need to have these hardcore set lists and lines. You can, if there's that connection there with that kind of intimacy, then it's okay that there's some differences there. And in fact, it's good.
One of our first dates, we were at the beach and walking along the beach, looking at the stars, and both of us in awe of the beauty. And so that sort of connection, that was a beautiful conversation and it did go into what are my beliefs about God and life. But we're walking along the beach admiring the stars at the same time. So it worked very well in that respect. It's interesting, isn't it? Because when we were teenagers, we told, don't date anybody outside of the faith. And not all of those marriages worked, even though and it's to do with the ceiling and the children. And now it's like, well, maybe I don't need that as much. So I don't know. I don't know where that fits now in the doctrine, if you've sort of already passed those milestones. I don't know. That's just a bit of K philosophy there. But I one of my top values is fun, which obviously is the back of your chair, because it's like, I want fun in my life. I want to enjoy
Me too.
life. It's like,
Yes. If I'm on a date and I push you into a bush, you got to laugh. If that makes you mad, like that's not a match.
So you can have your values of your faith or God as your top. Family would be the next one. I guess I'd like to know how family fits into the dating thing, because you've got 6 children.
I do.
I married this guy. I had 6 children. So people say to me, how on earth are you ever going to find a guy if you've got 6 children? And you go, like, this guy was willing to take me with 6 children. So
and they were young. They were still all at home.
They were still at home. Yeah, they were 7 to 14. Like, they were.
Wow.
And every now and again when things got tough, it's like, hey, you met me at the beach in the bathers with the kids in a tent. Like, that's how he met me, right? There was no pretense here. Nothing you didn't know. But yeah, so I guess that's one message I'd like to give people, is that there are men brave enough to take on a woman with 6 children. It's not without problems and difficulties, but my children came to love him as their father. Like, they saw him as a role model, as a person they were close to. They were really, he died 5.5 years ago now, and they were devastated. It was my oldest son. So he was 14. He was a bratty teenager. And he said, he feels like I've lost my best friend. And so that's how much a guy can take on a family of 6 children.
That's beautiful. I think what I tell my friends that are maybe just starting out in dating, we all have difficulties at this point, right? Like, we're not 20-year-olds with the world as our oyster and nothing trailing behind us. We've got lots of things trailing behind us at this point. We've got previous spouses and widows and widowers. Maybe we've never been married. And that right there is something trailing behind us. That you don't get to adulthood and find yourself single without trauma, without pain, without loss, without grief, without issues. We have health problems at this point, and financial challenges, and children, and extended family, and so much faith crises, and so many different things. And I think the hope is everybody is coming to this space with pain that they've had in their lives. And we don't need to try and figure out, well, I'm okay with this, but not with this. I truly believe that if we're doing this with the Lord, and that we are open to his promptings and his little pushes and his opening our minds to different situations, different, people, even of different faiths. I can't speak to someone else's journey, that they might not find their beautiful match in a different faith, and then in the end travel that journey that the Lord is so aware of, and has each of our eternal progressions in his hands. Moses 139 is one of my favorite scriptures that really teaches us everything. My work and my glory is to bring to pass the eternal life of man. Everything he does is for each and every one of our eternal salvation. And to think that doesn't apply to our relationships, our dating, our families, like he knows each one of us individually, and he knows that, who can bless our lives and who we can bless lives. And that it doesn't have to, of course, we have in the gospel, in the church, I should say, we have these patterns that we all hope we can attain, but that it's not realistic. And that's okay. Like, that's okay. Like, our ultimate goal is actually the celestial kingdom, not this perfect cookie cutter ideal on the earth. It's making these covenants and following the Lord. And that looks different for every single one of us. And the Lord's okay with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
I think that's important to remind people that the Lord's okay, that he actually loves all his children, the non-LDS people too. He loves them just as much. And they have a path, and that's okay, because the Lord's got a plan for everybody. And so, yeah, he's got a plan for us now too, despite the fact that we're getting older and we've been through all these pains and traumas and experiences. I think all these have made you strong. All these are for your good. It's like, yeah, good.
I love to say that, to let your experiences and your conflicts and your trials and opposition, to let it refine you instead of define you. We just don't have to be defined. If we do the work, if we look at the basic principles of healing from trauma, taking ownership and being vulnerable, and sharing our pain, learning how to have grief recovery, learning how to combat shame. We chatted about that earlier, learning shame resilience, especially in our church. It's not the gospel. I really like to differentiate between the church as an org that houses the gospel of Jesus Christ. There's no shame in the gospel of Jesus Christ, but shame has crept in to the church and so many moving parts of it.
Yeah, and to the culture of the religion. Yeah.
It has. And to start building an awareness of that, the shame that comes from divorce and from being single, even if the shame of being single and never even been divorced I think can be just as damaging to yourself, your growth, and your relationship with the Lord and others as just as much as divorce can.
Yeah. And there's not only divorce, there's sometimes people make bad choices and end up being excommunicated or losing some of their temple recommend or privileges. So there's this wide spectrum of things, because when we're this age, there's going to be stuff.
There is.
Going to be stuff. Well, that sounds like another whole conversation, Sariah.
Yeah. We have to have you back.
We'll have you back, and we're going to talk about shame, because I think it's, there is plenty of research to show that shame is actually one of the worst of the negative emotions, and to carry that with us is actually very damaging to our soul.
Yeah.
So we talk about that and what to do to heal it. Is there anything else you'd like to say as we close up, Sariah?
It has been a privilege to be here. I am a big proponent for adult singles in the church and outside of the church as well. Back a little bit, wrapping up the intentional dating. Again, I have such a strong belief that if we will let the Lord teach us, we know from Ether that he will show us our weaknesses. And that's progression. It's scary. It's so scary to sit, right? To be triggered, to notice, to feel feelings of anger and loss and pain and grief. But being in a singles realm, making single connections and dating really does offer an opportunity to show us. I'm grateful. I'm really grateful that the Lord asked me to go on this journey, because I think that I hit a stagnancy in my healing. And this has actually given me a lot more opportunity and platforms to root out even more of my pain, my challenges, and to grow closer to him. I have had to rely on the Lord like no other to date. And so
I couldn't agree more. I totally agree with that. Just in my own personal experience, for sure. Yeah.
Right. So everybody who's listening, start being brave and thinking about dating again.
No excuses.
Get the courage.
Thank you very much, Sariah, for being here. Thank you, Kim. And we will meet again next week. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.